What cornerback could the Dallas Cowboys target in round one? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for our listeners right now. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, the sun is shining here in Pennsylvania. The birds are out chirping. It's a great, beautiful morning. How you doing?
Oh man, to be in Pennsylvania this morning would be the Schadenfreude would be incredible. I'd be wandering the streets of Philly, just to see all the. My mind wanders as soon as the game was over. Honestly, now my mind wandered to that meme that you see on Twitter of the guy wearing the Eagles hat, after one of their losses, and then he does the sad Eagles flap.
Yeah,
Like that was just that part was really fun to kind of watch all that.
It's also really fun to see the Eagle fans crying about the officiating after the way that their game went against the 49ers. So it's just lovely. The Cowboys season, obviously, in the playoffs didn't go the way that we were hoping, but we could take a little bit of happiness from the Eagles losing the Super Bowl. It's fun.
I'm certainly going to. So yeah, so please enjoy with me. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So on today's episode, we're going to take a look at three cornerback prospects as we start our NFL draft profiles. The Cowboys could potentially be interested in round one. We kind of have a feeling that's one of the positions that they're going to attack early in the draft. So we've got three corners lined up: Kelee Ringo from Georgia, Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State, and Cam Smith from South Carolina that we're going to talk about today. Landon, let's start with Kelee Ringo from Georgia. Okay. Probably the biggest name of the group. Was somebody who was being mocked inside of the top 10 for most of the offseason and certainly during the season. What did you see when you turned on the tape?
All three of these guys are plus size corners. I mean, let's just go ahead and get that out of the way up front. And Keelee's no exception. He came in, they have him listed 6'2", 205, and he looks like that. He's big with long limbs. He's definitely a Quinn type boundary corner. He's very thick, he's not like a beanpole type. Like he's got a kind of a filled out midsection chest a little bit. So he's got some good weight on him. Definitely looks most comfy in kind of a side saddle while playing in a silo. He's definitely part of that Kirby Smart, Saban defensive back, school of kind of side saddling up the sideline. He's got real patient feet and press. He's comfy flipping his hips outside and running hip to hip to wide receiver. I think that may have been one of the better things that he did was kind of playing the ball down the field. He tacks the ball in the air well enough. He needs to be a little bit more consistent with some of the timing in his hands in the air, but he's pretty solid there. He's got good zone awareness. He tracks the pieces on the board very well. He's good at seeing guys coming in and out of the zones. He's patient and off coverage. Some of the downside stuff is, he isn't as twitchy as much as you love for a cornerback prospect.
Straight line, right?
Yeah, he's gonna run fast. I was gonna say, I guarantee that he runs, like a sub 4.40 just based on who I've seen him running with on the tape. But I don't know that he's quite like change of direction explosive or start-stop explosive. His ankles seem a little bit stiff. His feet don't seem as quick as like some of these other corners you see. He kind of almost plods a little bit. And I actually watched a couple games and then I actually reached out to y'all in the DMs because I was like, he looked injured at times, or that he was fighting his body when he's trying to turn and
I just don't think he's the most flexible type of corner.
I definitely in the lower body specifically, it feels like. He's big, but he's not necessarily physical. He's not like a physical guy the way that you would want to see from someone that size. I wish he had more ball production for the type of player he was. You know, I actually saw a lot of Trayvon Diggs in his game, but he's not as productive on the football, and that's kind of the biggest upside of Trayvon Diggs. So, where does he win? He's a big, long silo cornerback. You put him in a cover 1, cover 3 system. I think that's where he's gonna thrive. I have concerns. My unanswered question is, his top end value seems scheme limited. Like, I think he is a cover 1, cover 3 boundary corner. I don't know that teams that aren't going to be running a lot of that are going to be as interested in him, or at least put as high a grade on him. So my unanswered question is, his top end value feels scheme limited. Where will he go in the NFL draft? Is he going to be as highly desired as someone who has kind of a more balanced skill set that can kind of fit into any scheme?
Yeah, I'll just add, I think he's going to test as like a 99th percentile athlete. Like I see him coming in at 211 pounds, running like a 4.35 or something like that. But his game feels very reactionary to me. Like, there's just no anticipation to his game. It's, the receiver made this, he broke on this route. I'm going to try to beat him to that spot, right? Or I'm going to just try to follow him. It's not, there's no route anticipation. There's no, hey, this is where I think the ball is going to go. Doesn't mean that you can't have a great NFL career, because there's a lot of corners out there that are just awesome athletes and just can react and stuff. But I don't know. I think a top end, I can see like an Xavier Rhodes type of corner, like at his peak, right? That type of corner.
When I brought this conversation into the DM group, one of the people I talked to was John Owning about this guy, and he and I kind of I couldn't quite get my words into what I was feeling, and I was able to kind of hash it out. I think when this guy knows what's coming, it's like, if he can anticipate the routes based on where they're breaking, he's good. Like, if he could see that you're running upfield, okay, I know that it's either a go route or a stop route, or if he's breaking, if the route's coming inside, the stem's coming inside, okay, it's an in breaking route. I think that's where he is good, and he plays the ball well, and he can, he has athleticism to get where he needs to go to beat another receiver, that sort of thing. Where the problem is when things don't go the way he's anticipating.
Well, or he gets matched up with a receiver that is just as athletic as he is. Because I saw him in 2021 against Jameson Williams. The first time he played, Williams was open all game long. And then this year against Marvin Harrison Jr. in the semifinal game, Harrison was just getting open at will, and he couldn't quite get to the same spots because Harrison is just as athletic as he is.
Yeah, I think when he anticipates what's going to happen, his athleticism is enough that he gets there at the same time as the person who knows the route. When he loses that advantage, which I think is an issue with, it's sort of like the Jared Goff in the Rams offense sort of situation with some of these corners, right? It's like when you play for Kirby Smart, you get put in such great positions, you get so well injected of knowledge of how to play the position, how to read routes and that sort of thing. And I think that obviously he takes that with him to some degree, but I wonder about his reactive athleticism when things don't happen the way he's anticipating. Does he still have that same kind of just fluid, natural athleticism? That's where I think, despite him being going to be, like I said, we both anticipate he's going to be an incredible tester at the combine. But when you pop on the tape, you see him fighting his body when he tries to turn. You see him just kind of not having the same level of quick feet that you expect. So I do agree that I think he will test well, but I wonder if there aren't some limitations to his athleticism that, are harder to kind of notice.
All right, before we move on, what round grade did you put on him?
I think if, again, I think he's kind of scheme specific on where his top end will go. If I was a team like the Cowboys, if I was a cover 1, cover 3 team, I'd take him in the second round without any problems. I think the biggest issue I have with him is more that I don't think he will be nearly as good a player in a scheme that he doesn't fit in. I think if you put him in the right scheme, he's a good player.
And we just know that corners get boosted up really high, and especially ones that are as big as he is, and that's going to test as well. So I've got a feeling if the Cowboys want him, you'll have to take him at 26. And there's a great chance that he doesn't even make it there to 26 with
maybe
how much teams cover corner. So I've got a second round grade on him. I think he could be an option for the Cowboys in round 1.
I agree.
I kind of hope not. Let's talk about Penn State corner Joey Porter Jr. next. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When you're at your best, you can do great things, but sometimes life gets you bogged down, which may have you feeling overwhelmed, or you're just not showing up in the way that you'd want to. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you, because when you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything life that throws at you. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, it's flexible, it's affordable. Best of all, it's available entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for any reason at no additional charge. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can help you get there. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is betterhelp.com/lockedon. All right, Landon, let's talk about Penn State cornerback Joey Porter Jr. Little spoiler, one of my favorite players in this draft, but what did you see on tape?
I can see why. I mean, I liked him a lot. He's tall, svelte. He's very thin in the midsection, especially, I got to tell you, it's great that you chose him next, because I kept on going back to Ringo after watching Porter to kind of compare and contrast, because they're very, despite being kind of put in the same box, right, of that kind of tall, again, Quinn type corner, right, with long arms, they're very different players, right?
Oh, yeah.
Porter's tall, like I said, kind of thin in the midsection. He's got really long levers and long legs, very thin midsections. Like I said, incredible reach. I mean, obviously we've talked about this. You see it on tape. He's got arms like go gadget arms. Like they're incredible for his body size. The big, I think, one of the big, kind of physiological differences between him and Kelee, besides the midsection kind of weight that he carries. And again, not saying Ringo's fat. I'm saying Ringo carries muscle there.
He's just stocky.
He's just
right?
stockier. Yeah. I think that the biggest difference to me between these two is Porter got great lower body flexibility. He plays with low pad level, especially for a leggy guy like him. His hips are very low, no matter, whether it's at the snap or, in the middle of the snap. He plays with good play pad level. He coils up very well. And I think that's attributing to his lower body flexibility. Coils up very well to absorb contact from blocks to maintain proper outside leverage in the run game. He's not going to, stone a tackle who's coming to pull out him, but he's able to kind of get around him and at least keep his outside position and force the play back inside. Long arms at pad level make for a solid tackler when given the opportunity in the run game. He will struggle at times if he gets his head down. I mean, there were times I saw him kind of put his head down too far and he lunges at guys. That's something he just needs to keep his eyes up when he tackles. That's fine. That's something we can work with. He's very, very physical with the receiver in route. I like that. He throws his hands a lot. He's annoying the hell out of the wide receiver. He's trying to get him out of his route. He's definitely going to draw some illegal contact calls with his in-route physicality.
You're going to have to live with penalties with him. You are.
But I'd rather teach him some subtlety or reel him in a bit than to have to push him in this area. Comfortable in a back pedal out of off coverage, good potential as a hand fighter and press. He's comfy in both zone and man. In zone, he quickly identifies targets as they move in and out of his section. We talked about the other aspects of how comfortable he's comfortable playing with his back to the quarterback. He has those long legs that I mentioned, which really help him in zone coverage because he covers area quickly. If he's at a full stop, he can make it to all areas of zone with just a few steps. Where does he win? He's a big physical man coverage corner. I mean, he could do more than that, but that's what you're going to be paying him for is beating up wide receivers at the line of scrimmage, knocking them off their stems and disrupting the passing concepts. Unanswered questions. I mean, it. Can he avoid becoming a penalty machine? That's really the question is because he's just so physical and he beats guys up at the line of scrimmage. You worry about that. I will add in one more thing. It was incredibly funny to watch him dip under offensive linemen to get around on blitzing to make sacks. I was like, I wonder where he learned that from. You see despite his dad playing very different position on defense, you see some of that aspect of his dad's game in some aspects of his play, which is interesting.
So really quickly, you mentioned the penalties. I think he had
Yeah.
9 penalties last year, which is a ton. So it's either two things. Number one, can he learn to cut back on the penalties, or can he be such a playmaker in other areas of the game where you live with the 9 penalties you get? I kind of think you can.
I think
Landon,
it's both.
I'm not sure I've seen a corner better at covering slants in the entire time that we've done this than him. It's incredible. And it's this combination of he's physical and he has such long arms that there's just because he can be right on the back of a wide receiver and reach around, and there's just no way for the quarterback to fit the ball in there. You're going to come to learn after doing a bunch of these podcasts with me that I've loved these long corners that also have this attitude. Like they just play with a chip on their shoulder, and that's Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it. One of the hardest things to do is defend a perfectly thrown slant when you're in perfect trail position, because there's just a physics aspect. The angle is not going to be correct. But when you've got, I mean, what is his arm length? It's 35
I'm
plus,
glad that you
right?
mentioned that. So the longest that we have at the NFL Combine ever for a cornerback is 34 inches. I think he's going to beat that.
Wow. And it shows you, right? Like when you're in that trail position, you're able to reach across the front of the body of the wide receiver to knock the ball away. So it just gives you, it makes the quarterback have to be that much more accurate, in order to kind of fit that window. I liked him a lot. I tend to think you posed the question of, is this about penalty reduction or about living with the penalties? I think it's a bit of both. He's gonna have to work on the technique. He is going to have to improve, and honestly, it's just about being more subtle. It's about being more professional and hiding your holds, and you know what I'm saying. I think
that's
he's
why I
gonna
think Al Harris would be the absolute perfect defensive back coach for him, right? Like I can see a lot of similarities in their game actually, which leads me to this. I'm not sure if he's going to make it to 26 for the Cowboys, but I can't imagine a better spot for him playing opposite of Trevon Diggs, having Bland who can play in the slot with this pass rush. I think it would be a home run pick by the Cowboys.
I did too. Yeah, I mean, I think he is a guy that I would be surprised if he made it to 26 just based on what I saw on tape. And again, the downside being mostly something that's a fixable aspect, it feels like, of his game. I'm a big fan. I think he definitely would be a huge fit, a great fit for what the Cowboys do, and play opposite of Trevon Diggs in a way better than anyone that we've had so far.
We're really early in this process. The NFL Combine doesn't start for another 2 weeks, but he's on the short list of names that I would like the Cowboys to consider at 26 if he makes it there. Because I just think, man, you get somebody like that added to your secondary with the safeties that you have with an all-pro corner and Diggs, and now we're really talking about doing something special on defense. Big fan. One more cornerback that we have to talk about, Landon. It's Cam Smith from South Carolina, where we know the defensive backs from South Carolina pretty well. Excited to talk about him next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download the FanDuel app. It's America's #1 sportsbook because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on literally anything in the NBA, from money lines to points scored to number of three-pointers drained in a given game. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets into a same-game parlay for a chance at a bigger payout. So don't miss this chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. Landon, let's talk about Cam Smith, cornerback from South Carolina. What'd you think?
I mean, again, all these guys are supersized. This guy's no different. He's good size with great length. Again, another kind of skinnier body, longer torso. He doesn't have quite the long legs you saw with Porter, I don't think, but I think he has kind of a longer midsection. He clicks and closes extremely well. Then he gets downhill as soon as he sees it. He has a very smooth pedal. Yeah, I think that this of the three guys, this is the best off coverage guy. Like whether it's man or zone, this is the guy that reads the routes the best. He understands what's happening and then reacts appropriately to that. He was basically assigned following Jalen Hyatt when they played Tennessee and held his own better than most corners in the SEC, honestly. And in that game, he basically operated almost exclusively in off coverage out of the slot, which is, very different than what you see kind of in some of his other tape.
Those other two corners we just talked about, there's no way they can play in the slot. Cam Smith can.
No, especially not off coverage like that. Like maybe Ringo could, but but it would not be pretty. He patient went in off coverage, but then sudden out of his pedal when he commits to a direction. Like when I say he clicks and closes well, like he teleports when he comes out of his pedal. It really is like he's decisive and he gets that to a certain direction very quickly. He gets handsy and a bit grabby when asked to run with receivers up the sideline. And this is not, I would like to specify this with Porter. Porter's beating up a wide receiver while they're running the route. This guy seems like he's panicking at times. Like he's not comfortable with what he's doing. He's trying to grab because he doesn't want you to get away from him. It's like when he loses his eyes on the QB, he doesn't seem comfortable anymore.
Well, I think it's because I don't think he's the athlete that the other two guys are.
That would make some sense, honestly. Because it's that there's like a panic when he's asked to flip his hips and start to run with guys. You see him like, kind of reaching and grabbing and it's not, he's turning the wrong way when he's looking back at times. I honestly wonder how much experience he has in running up the sideline in cover one and that sort of thing. I think athleticism is definitely going to be a part of it, but I also think that he, I watched 2 games of his, and I didn't see more than like maybe 2 or 3 snaps of like press bail coverage or coverage where he was up at the line of scrimmage and then asked to turn and run. So I think that there could be some upside there just simply because he may get better with some practice. But I do agree that I don't know that he's the athlete that these other 2 guys are.
I do think of the 3 corners, I think he has the best ball skills.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because I mean that was the one thing I would say about both Porter and Ringo is there's not a ton of production on the football, but I mean, that's not terribly surprising, right? When you think about it, because those guys are more press corners. They're going to get up there. The press guys don't usually get a ton of interceptions. Like that's just not necessarily the part of the game. Good.
I got the data for you. So he's been targeted 94 times in his college career. 24 of them were either picked off or pass defenses.
See, that's a guy who sees what's going on and attacking the football in the air. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I saw him, I think, with a couple of different pass deflections. I didn't see any interceptions when I was there, but I think you see the kind of guy who would rather sit back and use his mind and his eyes to kind of lead his feet, because he, like I said, he loves being in off coverage. He loves watching the stems and then knowing what the route is going to be based on the stems. And he's very decisive in that matter. I also think he's a very good blitzer. Real quick, I missed a note here. He needs to be more physical at the line of scrimmage and press. That's another part of his issue, right? It's I don't think he has a ton of experience there, but there were too many times when I think I saw like 4 or 5 of his snaps where he was in press and he didn't even get a hand on the guy. Like he doesn't try to get a hand on the guy, and the guy just kind of gets past him. He's a good blitzer and he's an effective attacker. I think one thing that I really liked about his game too is that he has a very strong grip as a tackler. There were times when I saw him kind of overrun tackles, which, he needs to get better at, but he was able to grab the ball carrier and from the ground, drag the guy down. So, or at the very least, hold on until the cavalry arrived. So I think those are all kind of positive aspects of his game. But to me, he is very different than these other 2 guys, even though I kind of pointed out the difference between Ringo and Porter.
Yes.
Smith is very different than these other 2 in the sense that he definitely wants to play off. He definitely wants to play with his eyes. He definitely wants space to allow you to run your route a little bit so he can anticipate what you're going to do in the second part of your route.
Totally agree. The one thing that I saw a couple different times is he is so good at either jarring a ball loose that a receiver has, kind of sticking his hand in there, or he digs at the ball all the time. There was one game I saw, they threw 3 fades against them, and on all 3 fades, the ball hit the receiver in both hands, and he was able to dig it out. And that's really impressive to me. The other thing is his ability to be flexible. Like his upper body is so flexible. I saw one play where he jumped off the wrong leg, completely turned his body the one way and was able to knock the ball down. Like he is just so flexible and springy that way. But I don't think he's the athlete that Ringo or Porter are. Like I think he's going to run high 4.4s, maybe low 4.5s. And it's just not all that concerning to me because he is so good at playing the football in the air. So he's a different type of corner. But I like him. I think he's another really talented cornerback in this class.
Yeah, I put down where does he win? Again, reactive route reading and off coverage. That's just basically what the notes are telling you as well. And his unanswered question is, can he polish up his press tech to kind of take that to the level of his off technique? I don't know. I mean, let's kind of to compare it to the rest of these three. I feel like he's got less ways to go to get his off technique, get his press technique to where it needs to be than the other guys would need to go to get their off technique kind of up to his. So,
all right. So let's stack these. It's options for the Cowboys at 26. How would you do it?
Well, I just think that Cam Smith's skill set isn't as much of a fit for what the Cowboys are doing, right? Like in my opinion, I kind of think I would like Cam Smith better than Ringo, but I think for the Cowboys, I would probably stack it Porter, Ringo, Smith. Simply because I think Ringo is a better fit and has a higher ceiling in this defense than Cam Smith does. So that's my rating: Porter, Ringo, Smith.
This is fun because mine's different. Mine's Smith, Porter, Ringo, because I actually like the ability that Cam Smith can play in the slot as well. It's a little bit of that Deron Bland thing where you're bigger and longer than most slot corners, but you are pretty good enough and you can kind of move in and out. I think the flexibility there, it would be intriguing for me, but I think for me, Smith and Porter are at least a tier difference. Those are the two guys I would love for the Cowboys at 26. If they drafted Ringo at 26, it'd be okay. But truthfully, the first two I'd be very happy with.
Honestly, I think that if it wasn't a Cowboys centric thing, I probably would rate him similar to that as well. I mean, not that Cam Smith wouldn't be a good fit in the Cowboys at all. That's not the case. It's just I think that Porter and Ringo specifically, their ceilings are higher in that.
Porter just feels like an awesome fit for Dallas.
Yeah.
Like in just pure fit, it's just unbelievable.
It's no-brainer. Yeah, absolutely.
We just covered three cornerbacks that very likely could be picks for the Cowboys at 26. There's at least three other cornerbacks in this class that are going to be first-round guys. It is a wild cornerback class. So if there's one position the Cowboys should look at early, this cornerback pool, very, very talented. Any final thoughts on this group before we head out?
No, it's a good group, and the fact that you have these three kind of hovering around where the Cowboys potentially could be picking, while knowing that there are still more corners out there, it does bode well for what the Cowboys are trying to get done in this draft.
All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Go check out the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Tomorrow, we will be back to continue our positional review from the 2022 season. We're going to be looking at the tight end position. That's a really interesting one.
Yeah,
we get
lots
of the offseason. Should be a lot of Sean McEwen talk tomorrow, I think. Probably not. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.